The metaverse is obviously a very hot topic right now. Many people are seeing it as one of the largest commercial opportunities in all of technology. I think the largest number I've seen is that Citi is projecting the metaverse economy to be as large as $13 trillion by 2030. Now, I think that if you think about the metaverse just as these sort of new VR applications, then $13 trillion by 2030 is a little bit lofty. But if you think about the metaverse as this next generation of the internet, but with new features and new sorts of qualities, I think 13 trillion becomes a lot more reasonable. And I think that the rush into the metaverse by so many companies, most notably folks like Facebook, who even rebranded specifically for that purpose, is very warranted. So in my view, the metaverse is more of an evolution of the internet than something wholly new. The metaverse and the internet, largely share the same qualities, but the metaverse, I think, is distinct in that it will emphasize certain things and transcend certain limitations that have been present up until now on the internet. And so if I had to just place in a few words, I think the metaverse is going to have greater connectivity, greater immersiveness, and a larger magnitude. That connectivity, I think, is going to be seen where applications are blending together in a way that is not really very common or even possible on today's internet. I think the immersiveness is going to be driven in part by that blending of applications, but also by new media, such as VR, which is sort of an inherently immersive medium. And I think that what's really exciting to me about the metaverse is the magnitude element. And I think this comes from innovations that allow creators to collaborate on a much greater scale than what's been possible before in order to create applications that, just from a pure size standpoint and vastness standpoint, I think will make today's internet feel very small and constricted. And in terms of what will the metaverse lack that the internet is full of today, I think we're going to have far less friction in terms of payments, friction in terms of accounts, friction between applications where the types of things you use in one application don't port very well to other applications. We'll also, I think, see fewer or less 2D, more 3D, more VR, and a lot less text in favor of other types of ways of showing or explaining things. I think a lot of people's mental model of the metaverse today is very influenced by Ready Player One, the book turned Steven Spielberg film, which I think was a lot of people's first view into what does sort of this, maybe VR powered future look like. Now in Ready Player One, it's very dystopian. It's set in a future which is rather bleak. And the metaverse was created by this company called Gregarious Simulation Systems. And it's under threat because they're sort of an evil corporation which is trying to solve this puzzle within the metaverse, which enables you to sort of take control of it. Now, fortunately, I think this is very unrealistic. And just for fun, I wanted to look at some other sort of past representations of projecting future technologies. And, a lot of the representations are kind of ridiculous and fun. Although what I'll definitely say is that, in researching this sort of imagery, I came away impressed by, at least from a pure functionality standpoint, the sort of prescience of a lot of past futurists, things like video calls from a functionality standpoint has obviously arrived in a major way, although it doesn't look very much like it does in this photo. So in terms of shifting our mental model of the metaverse into what I would see as a more accurate mental model, I think there's a few key adjustments. One is that, let me start like this. So I think the common view of the metaverse is that it's something that's extremely VR oriented, that the metaverse has sort of a real world feel and continuity, almost just like being in the physical world, except for that your world is digital. And I think another thing that I've seen very common in discourse in terms of investing in the metaverse is that there's this idea that someone's metaverse is going to win. Is it going to be Meta's metaverse? Is it going to be one of these sort of Ethereum-based metaverses like Decentraland or the Sandbox? Will it be Roblox? What is it going to be? What metaverse is going to win? Now, my view of the metaverse contrasts with this in a couple key ways. First of all, I think that because the metaverse is really an extension of the internet, it's going to be very multi-device in the way that the internet is today. You can access Facebook on your phone, on your laptop, on your TV potentially. And I think it's going to be the same with metaverse applications where there's going to be views into the metaverse from devices like your phone, your laptop, your tablets, your smart devices, and then additionally, some of these new media like AR devices, VR devices are going to sort of take that a step further. I think a good example of this is our game that we've developed at Nifty Jigs, DuroDogs, and I have some images from that later on in the presentation. But there you have a dog which, it's a digital good, it's an NFT, it's a dog that you own, but there's already multiple views of that dog for different applications. And I think that what we'll see is, if I own a digital pet dog through something like an NFT, then maybe there's a way I can view that dog on my phone. Maybe I can see that dog in AR when I go out on a walk. Maybe I can go on an adventure with my dog in VR when I get back home. But this sort of seamlessness between applications and across devices is not going to be purely VR. It's going to be multi-device and multimedia. I also think that something that I've seen a lot in this sort of investing discourse around the metaverse is metaverse real estate. And I think that maybe confuses or misses the point of the metaverse in a sense where, in the physical world, you're constricted by, you have to move through space. And so the old adage of location, location, location for real estate is very appropriate. You want to build your luxury apartments next to your high-end restaurants. But in the metaverse, I don't think that this is really applicable. I think that you're going to access the metaverse more like you access the internet today through various gateways and applications, even though the lines between applications will blur. I don't think that you're going to have to get in your metaverse car and drive to the metaverse store from your metaverse house when you want to go buy something. And so I think the idea of speculating on prime real estate in the metaverse, I think shows kind of how early we are and how I don't think people have really necessarily appreciated what the metaverse might actually be like and what sorts of opportunities and limitations exist within that space relative to real world counterparts. Perhaps most importantly, I think the idea that a single metaverse is going to win and be controlled by one company is very silly. It's sort of like thinking that one company is going to own the internet. Rather, I think similar to the internet, where certain internet protocols outcompeted the others, it became the dominant protocols for communication and commerce between different companies. I think the same thing will happen with the metaverse, where certain protocols will emerge as winners. But there's not going to be a single dominant company. There's not going to be a key to the metaverse, which you can discover and then turn the metaverse into this horrible place for everybody. I think today's metaverses, there's a lot of room for improvement. I think if you look at something like Meta and what they're doing, I think that they have a really strong perspective on the metaverse. I see a lot of overlap between how they talk about the metaverse opportunity and how we talk about it at Nifty Jigs. But I think that one of the primary limitations for a company like Meta is they have a desire to really have a high degree of ownership over this metaverse, which I think is evidenced by their desire to charge close to 50% of digital goods sold inside of their metaverse. And I think by the time they sort of relinquish that type of control, other protocols will have emerged which become really the dominant protocol or protocols for metaverse activity, metaverse commerce. And I think a company like Meta will still have an amazing opportunity to plug into that with their access to users, with all the advancements that they've made through Oculus in VR. But I don't think that they're going to be able to own or control the metaverse to make it the way that they might like to. On the more blockchain side of things, with metaverses like the Sandbox or Decentraland, I think that there's a lot of really cool things happening with these companies, but I think that, first of all, because they're built and their protocols are based in Ethereum, I think that that puts them in an extremely difficult spot to be able to scale to accommodate the level of usage that you would expect with the metaverse. And I also think that these are still very oriented around speculation, and speculation which is not necessarily that appropriate for the metaverse, such as speculating on digital real estate. Now, still, I think blockchain plays a huge role in the creation of the metaverse. A couple of key things that I think blockchain can do. One is what I think is well described potentially as Web3, which to me is really just talking about accessing applications via a wallet. When you access an application with a wallet, you bring your ability to make payments, you bring your NFTs, you bring your identity with you in a very low friction way. And I think that this is one of the main ways that you can get this increased continuity between applications and decreased friction between applications by using a wallet as your main access point and the source of your identity across applications. I also think blockchain can serve as a trusted middle layer that allows applications to coordinate. And this is really important because I think to build things at the scale of the metaverse, we need to have, millions of creators working together. And that means that as an application builder, as a creator, I need to have ways of working with and coordinating with other apps, other creators who I've never met before, never heard of before, have no idea who they are, maybe only have one interaction with them ever. And I think blockchain as a trusted middle layer is the type of innovation that's necessary to allow for collaboration and interaction on that scale to be possible. Perhaps most importantly, though, I think payments is perhaps the number one thing that blockchain offers the metaverse. A metaverse economy, collaboration and commerce in the digital world, it's not well served by legacy payments. And I think that blockchain-based micropayments are one of the primary tools to help create a new commercial system for something like the metaverse. Now, naturally, Unbounded Capital, we think scalable blockchains, primarily BSV, which is where our focus is now, will have major advantages in terms of providing these functions for metaverse applications due to the ambitions of these metaverse applications to serve billions of users. And I think ultimately the protocols that win will be the protocols that can serve billions of users. I think BSV is one of these protocols, kind of at a base layer, is in a very strong position to emerge as one of the dominant protocols within the metaverse. I'll make this part quick. Micropayments, I think, are extremely important to metaverse commerce. In the physical world, things are expensive to produce, and you're probably not going to go to the store or have Amazon ship you something unless it's for at least, let's say, $5. And also, when you buy something in the real world, let's say you buy a jacket, it doesn't cost whoever created that jacket for you any ongoing cost for you to wear that jacket wherever you want. Digital goods and goods inside the metaverse work extremely differently. They're very cheap to produce, not necessarily cheap to design, but once you've designed them, replicating them is extremely cheap. And very often, the value of a digital good or a digital service is very low, well below $5, well below current payment minimums on something like a credit card. But another challenge of digital goods in the metaverse is that they present recurring cost. I can wear my jacket for free once I've purchased it, but if I want to wear my jacket in the metaverse, someone has to pay for that. They have to pay to render that jacket in 3D or VR space. There's recurring cloud costs to all these things. So to make a long story short, I think that these challenges posed by digital goods in a digital good-based economy are very well solved by micropayments. And without micropayments, I don't see how you can create a vibrant economy inside of something like the metaverse with the limitations of legacy payments. So there's a couple of really exciting BSV companies to watch. Maybe I'm biased here, but first and foremost among those, I think, are Unbounded Capital portfolio companies Hancash and Run. Hancash is a wallet, this Web3 style wallet, which you can use to log into an app where you have your ability to make one-click payments and you can bring your NFTs with you. And it really helps create a seamless cross-application experience where you can port your identity, your digital goods, and your payments with you. Run is what Hancash uses for digital goods. It's a token protocol to create the types of digital goods that I think are appropriate for the metaverse: NFTs, programmable NFTs, NFTs that work inside of smart contracts. And Run as a protocol is already one of the most used blockchain protocols in existence today. Recently, there were about 10 times as many Run transactions in a single day as Ethereum transactions in total. I'll talk more about NiftyJigs and DuroDogs in a second. NiftyJigs is my company. What we're doing is we're building tools to help creators build metaverse applications. We're built on top of Hancash, we're built on top of Run, and we're solving those higher level challenges to make it simple for creators to take advantage of these extremely powerful tools. And one place where we've shown how that platform works is with our game DuroDogs. Transmira is pictured here. Kurt, so this is, I couldn't get a great picture of this, but there was a really cool thing that happened, not at this most recent Bitcoin conference in Miami, but last year, where this company Transmira, which uses Bitcoin SV, they created coupons for restaurants in Wynwood inside of AR space. And so what you have pictured here is Kurt demonstrating this technology, is holding up his phone, and he got a picture in AR of a little taco. And he clicks on that taco and it becomes a coupon, which he can take to a taco store and actually buy a taco using that coupon. And this is a really cool example of how tokens, AR, blockchain, secure blockchain transactions can all work together to create a really unique kind of metaverse style experience. BSV companies are starting to take the metaverse really seriously. This is an excerpt from Hancash's rebranded website, where they're really putting themselves forward as the metaverse wallet. And the value prop they provide that is very metaverse in its flavor is the ability to earn, pay, collect and trade relating to NFTs or digital goods with zero friction. And that really is the case. And here's a simple example, from our game DuroDogs. This is my dog Penny. On the left, we have Penny pictured, just screenshot from durodogs.com. And this is how Penny looks at durodogs.com. If I take Penny to roughrunner.com, you can tell Penny's the same dog, but she's represented differently. She has different animations, and it's a whole different site with a different game, different goals, different objectives. And this is just a little snapshot of what I think the future of these digital goods looks like, where the same possession, which is this NFT pet dog, gets represented differently in different places, where I have this cohesive experience, but it's not necessarily quite the same thing as in the physical world where, hey, my jacket always looks the same no matter where I wear it. Instead, depending on where I am inside of this, family of applications which builds up the metaverse, my digital possessions like a DuroDog might be represented differently, or different creators are contributing to how these goods are represented in different parts of the metaverse. And it's a huge project and it takes a lot of coordination. And I think that the key behind facilitating that coordination between the creators and facilitating the commercial interactions that those coordinations require is a highly scalable, highly secure protocol for data and for payments like BSV. So that's all I got. Metaverse is a big topic, a lot of things we could have discussed, but happy to answer questions about things here, other things that you have on your mind about the metaverse, what we're up to at NiftyJigs and DuroDogs, and more about how Unbounded Capital is thinking about the metaverse from an investing standpoint.
So yeah, for everyone that joined midway, feel free to ask your questions directly, take your microphone off mute, write them in the chat, or DM them directly to me, Jack, or Dave.
Jody sent me a DM, a question. You can DM me again. That's okay if I share your question with everybody.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. So Jody asked, what is the revenue stream for DuroDogs? And I can talk about what it is today, but I think what's also exciting is what's possible in the future and what we intend to do. So a game like DuroDogs today is making most of its money from selling NFTs or selling virtual currency. So we sell DuroDogs, which are NFTs, for $1.99. And we have clothes that you can buy for your dog, which you can earn for free, or which you can purchase for amounts all the way from as low as 10 cents to as high as like a couple $100s. And that's really very comparable to how most games monetize today. But in the future, something that we're really excited about is the ability to monetize through pay-as-you-go methods. So being able to create experiences for a DuroDog that you could charge like a few cents per play for that experience. And we think that's a really important part of where the incentive to actually utilize someone else's NFT comes from. Why would someone build a game for DuroDogs when I'm the one who creates and sells the DuroDogs? Well, the answer might be that I can charge those users 5 cents or 10 cents at a time to play my game. And it's a simpler way of accessing an existing audience rather than having to build a game like DuroDogs from scratch. Another cool thing that we can do is we could take our DuroDog and license the images and IP to other games using like a micro licensing model. So maybe a game which is charging 10 cents per play to its users, we say, hey, we worked hard on the animations, the images to represent that dog in your game. Why don't you, as a licensing fee, pay us half a cent or a tenth of a cent out of that 10 cents that you're charging your users? And this is a type of arrangement that I think scales really well to hundreds or thousands of different creators, which might be contributing at one time to a metaverse application, where, you know, if I'm building some kind of experience that I'm charging 25 cents, let's say every 30 minutes to experience, and I'm using creations from thousands of different creators, potentially at different times, how do I pay for that? I think one of the ways you could pay for that is by chopping up that 25 cents into, you know, hundreds or thousands of sub-cent pieces and sending those all out in real time to get creators paid. And I think that this works much better in terms of giving creators the upside that justifies the effort to build these types of things in the first place.
Super cool, Jack. Super cool. I love it. I love the micropayments and the innovation. Can't wait to see and hear more.
Thanks, Jody.
So we have a question Francesca asked in the chat. You expressed some skepticism about the sale of real estate in the metaverse. Can you elaborate on that? I have my own reasons for skepticism, but Jack, I'll let you take this first.
I just think real estate is very different when I can press a button and transport to somewhere else in the world. And that's possible in the metaverse. It's not possible in the physical world. And so I think if you speculate on real estate because it's close to something else that you think is going to be popular in the metaverse, you're kind of missing the fact that, you know, there's not that much benefit to someone being walking distance from your storefront because they're closer than walking distance to every storefront in the metaverse. So I just don't think it's very, I can imagine on a small scale having digital properties inside of like very popular locations in the metaverse having value for sure. But I don't think that there's going to be this like massive land grab where there's all kinds of, you know, billion-dollar properties within the metaverse the way that some people maybe are expecting or are acting as if that's going to be the case.
And does this apply for metaverse yachts or just for real estate?
I think that the way you demonstrate your wealth inside the metaverse is going to look very different. So anyone can have a yacht in the metaverse.
Yeah.
So the question is going to be, how do you have a yacht that's way more awesome than everybody else's yacht? And what does that look like?
So a conversation that all of us, Jack, Dave, myself, and Mike on the call had with the founder of Transmira was just on how the laws developed around having potentially multiple metaverse properties in a specific physical location. So let's say, you own Madison Square Garden. Do you have the rights in kind of like a metaverse in 10 or 20 years to all digital property built there? Can anyone build something there? Can there just be one person that builds something there? I think a lot of the value of potential real estate really depends on really how laws and regulations play out in the real world. And of course, I think we'll see a lot of different trials and tribulations in the metaverse before actual governments get involved, and that will probably inform policy. But I think policy will play a pretty big role in the value of real estate and to what degree you can replicate certain types of real estate and to what degree you can not for others. In general, I think bets like that from the investment standpoint don't seem to make a lot of sense. If you're really bullish on a specific type of metaverse, there's usually like a more clear way of expressing that. So we're seeing people buying 6-7 figure yachts and land and buildings in various metaverses. I think Sandbox has a lot of it, Decentraland. But if you just kind of bet on their tokens, the equities, the companies, I imagine the risk reward would be much better for that. And we see that similarly in crypto, where a lot of people like, okay, here's the way that I invest in the real world, and now how do I apply that in crypto? And as a result, those ways are extremely crowded by investors that are looking for similar ways to things that they know, and as a result, paying really high prices for things that are generally, I think, just poorly levered bets on these tokens going up. So you see a similar thing with like exchanges, with prime brokers, with miners. There's very, very few examples of those companies where if you just bought like a BTC or ETH at the time, that wouldn't have outperformed over a period of many years. There's like a small number of exceptions. And I think this is kind of a similar example of that.
Nathan asked a question. I talked in the presentation that the metaverse would have a lot less text in favor of other types of ways of showing or explaining things. And Nathan says that he remembers this prediction from the early days of the internet and wants to know which types of text I think will be replaced. And if we look at sort of some early examples of metaverse adoption on the enterprise side of things, there's a lot of people doing training in VR space in this. I mean, VR and metaverse are not equivalent, but part of what characterizes the metaverse is this greater immersiveness that's possible with VR. And I think there's a lot of, let's say, instructional or educational material that's already gone from text to video. But video, a lot of that video still is going to have text, still is going to have orally delivered explanations. And I think that what we'll start to see more of inside of VR space is this more kind of just experiential learning, where instead of like reading about some kind of organism, for example, I can pick it up, I can turn it around, I can touch it, I can see what happens when I touch this versus I touch that, or I can learn how to stock shelves correctly by going into like a VR store and putting things where they're supposed to go. So I think a lot of that, it provides different types of tools for education or explanations through more kind of immersive or hands-on methods than is possible on today's internet.
Hey, Jack. Good to see you again. Great presentation. Thanks for having us. I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on a few things. So first of all, I think the big promise of what makes, quote unquote, metaverse potentially interesting is kind of the commercialization of it, as compared to, say, like MMOs of yesteryear. I mean, we've had digital economies and large multiplayer, experiences, for the last couple decades in the gaming world. And I think one of the things that seems to be very exciting, or people are excited about in Metaverse, is this kind of idea of like portability of items and characters from, kind of world to world. How do you see that kind of playing out? Because it seems to me the biggest development cost for a game is the art. And it seems like even with NFTs being portable, each game has to interpret what that looks like in their game and create the art from scratch. So do you think you will start seeing the emergence of like portable like mesh formats? Like how do you see that actually playing out?
Yeah, so I can definitely speak from experience that like art is a really costly part of building games and building other kinds of more experiential applications. And when I talked about the Duro Dog, which is represented differently in multiple games, I think that it's a cool opportunity, but it's not to say that you can't reuse or sort of like commoditize different types of art or representations of these digital goods. And I absolutely think that that's something that is happening, will continue to happen. And I think that the main thing that I think different payments opens up is it creates a lot more upside for the artist in the first place, or for the digital creator. And I think that's really important. And it's not just from like the initial sale, because there's always going to be a cap on like, what am I willing to pay for an NFT, for example, especially if it's not an NFT that has any particular rarity. A lot of games, everyone plays with as the same character, or earns the same items. So there's not the same kind of rarity that there might be in other NFT ecosystems. But I think that if you look at how a lot of that art gets created and purchased today, what you have is the game developer builds the game, hires artists on platforms like Upwork, Fiverr, and pays like a fixed cost that's relatively low to artists in places like Ukraine or Pakistan or other parts of the world where that work is relatively affordable. And accordingly, the actual artists and asset creators have relatively little upside in their work. I think the way that this changes is that when I can license my work to games in like a recurring manner, where maybe I'm getting paid 1/10 of a cent, 100th of a cent for every use, I'm actually de-risking the purchase and utilization of that art to game developers and to creators, but I'm dramatically increasing my upside. So I think that, who's the richest animator in the world today? They're probably not, there's not that much money in it today. It's very popular because it's fun, but it's not a well-compensated job. But I think in the future, you're going to see people who create digital goods that ultimately turn them into billionaires. And I think that trickles down in the sense that it creates this incentive to contribute to art that's more appropriate relative to how important that art is for these types of applications. And so we can dramatically increase the supply of these art assets by increasing the upside to the artists, by fixing, the very high friction payments which stop these sorts of commercial models from emerging in the first place.
I'll add one thing to that also. So you're talking about like, how do you represent the dog kind of in all these different universes where that dog might look different, but you want it to have this consistency of being the same dog, for example. So part of our product offering at niftyjigs is kind of this whole taxonomy and digital asset manager to make that very simple for creators, but it also kind of points to the opportunity for asset creators. So like what we don't have right now for our dog is a 3D dog, which would be very useful for a whole host of Unity games. So for example, a creator could come to us, make that 3D dog in a generative way so that every dog that's ported over into 3D looks the same, although it has this new point of view. And then they could license that 3D asset to any developer that wanted to build in Unity, maybe us as like the IP, like the holder of the Duro Dog generative algorithm, all those things, we would get a cut as well. But you can kind of create this tree of payments where even though you're dealing in really small per use transaction values, you kind of split it up easily and seamlessly all through the APIs so that everyone that contributed to that stream has a cut.
Awesome, thank you. And then one more question. I might have missed this at the beginning, but question at Zach. Do you mind telling us a little bit more about the fund? What kind of investments you guys make, what your kind of views on Metaverse and startup landscape at large look like?
Yeah, so we have our main fund today that's basically fully deployed, but we're currently raising our second fund, a traditional VC fund structure, to invest in some of the companies we've invested in that have done really well out of fund one, like Hancash and Run that Jack mentioned in the presentation, and other companies that are building the infrastructure for the metaverse and for a supercharged internet with a scalable blockchain. So it's going to be a $50 to $70 million fund. We have the first close coming up in a couple months. And we're just going to keep doing what's worked well with our thesis, just at kind of a larger scale, and shift from primarily the pre-seed stage to the seed stage of investing. And I'll drop a link with some more info. And anyone has any questions, feel free to ping me at the end of this call or shoot me an email.
Awesome, and congrats on fund two.
Cool, thanks. So we have a couple new questions in the chat. Maureen, are you aware of any financial models related to the metaverse? I'll let Jack or Dave take this one.
I mean, I touched on a couple in the presentation. One is, the sale of digital goods, which actually happens rather differently in like Meta's metaverse, or at least what they want to do, where they're taking a really massive cut, almost 50% of digital goods sales. And, with their app ecosystem, typically, like if you go to the Oculus store from within your headset, you're paying like a purchase price for games very similar to how you would pay, let's say, $60 for the latest Mario Kart. You're paying $25 for virtual or VR ping pong. And so right now, at least for someone like Meta, they haven't really innovated on the commercial model at all relative to like what the current gaming ecosystem looks like. With things like Decentraland or Sandbox, a lot of it is these sort of speculative high value NFT purchases, which is different because it definitely places the purchaser, gives them a lot more rights than typically the purchaser of assets inside of games get today, where they can still resell those purchases. But no, I mean, there's nothing I think that has been demonstrated that will actually scale well and serve the needs of the metaverse well.
Question from Conan. Any thoughts on the use of music and music licensing structures throughout the metaverse? So I can start with this one. Well, I mean, I really should give it over to Dave. So in our first book, one of the big examples that we talked about was like, what would a Spotify that uses micropayments or a scalable blockchain look like? And Dave wrote the section on that. So I'll let him take it before I kind of share my thoughts. Jack and I are both musicians and met playing music together. So we've thought a lot about kind of the intersection of those two worlds.
Yeah, thanks, Zach. Yeah, I mean, I think music is really just another digital good that's very plentiful on the internet and will become more plentiful as we have a more immersive kind of metaverse experience. So it's the type of asset that we would want to facilitate from the asset creator point of view for the musician, and also developers that want to integrate that into whatever they're making. So from our point of view, it's very similar to what we're kind of already focused on with images, animations. There already is sound and music in our game, and it will be a big part of the gaming vertical. So like we'll integrate that relatively quickly. I think longer term, that's a whole vertical to focus on in its own right. But I think like the things that you'll see are much more efficiency, kind of new, like more meaningful types of ownership for users. So right now you're licensing or you're using Spotify, and artists can kind of like pull music from Spotify. We've seen that a few times. I think people like the iTunes experience largely because if you buy the song, you have it. It has other properties, like you can listen to it offline, things like that that are nice. So I think kind of marrying the ownership of physical music or downloaded music with kind of the user experience, especially the ability to get music very inexpensively for users of Spotify in a way where you can kind of get the best of both worlds will really be the end result for users. And then for creators, I think just the ability to have more control over how they price music will be a major development relative to Spotify. They're kind of at the mercy of the platform. and then being able to service the music through all different platforms. So not just Spotify or iTunes, but kind of there could be a host of curators or websites that take the music, which would be an NFT, and can serve it to end users. And there's going to be competition around how good is the algorithm for recommending the next song, or these things that you've seen Spotify excel at. So I think there's going to be a lot of benefits for creators and end users. And stay tuned with what we're up to at Nifty Jigs, because we'll definitely be integrating some of that stuff very, very soon in our platform.
I got one fun thing on that. Zach and I went to school with someone who actually just won a Grammy for their arrangement of, so they arranged a song from Kirby, which is a popular, kind of old school video game, for big band. It was a really cool arrangement, a Grammy worthy arrangement. But I think that what songs in video games have extraordinary cultural relevance, but those composers are not getting rewarded the way that radio hits would have been, because there's just a different commercial model. And the same way that I think like TikTok right now is the main hit maker in the music industry, I think the metaverse has a really good shot at being kind of like the hit maker for music, and that a lot of the biggest musicians like in the next 20 years are going to be the people who have the hit songs inside of these metaverse applications. So I think that it has the potential to really change like the nature of the music industry in general.
And for an example that's like not building on scalable blockchains today, but easily could, Royal has gotten a lot of traction, started by some very successful, experienced entrepreneurs. I'll drop this here. And they allow you to basically easily sell the royalties to not just all of your music, but to even just specific songs or albums. And we think that that model is going to become increasingly more popular. The problem with Royal's implementation currently is by using something like OpenSea and putting these NFTs or these per ownership tokens on Ethereum, you're pricing out the vast majority of creators in the world. So if you're saying, okay, I need to spend at least hundreds of dollars to own a piece of this, and then there's a many dollars, if not sometimes tens or hundreds of dollars transaction fee in doing so, that just takes away a large percentage of the commerce that is possible if, say, the transaction fee was quite low. So the good news is, for I think a lot of these business models they're really starting to take success on non-scalable blockchains, they aren't taking on as much technical debt as some of the other metaverse applications. But yeah, excited to still see more innovation happening in this space, and I'm confident that as these companies grow, they're gonna start, I think, making technical decisions that will make it more possible for them to have a greater number of users in commerce in the long term. Okay, well, thank you so much everyone for joining the Metaverse webinar today. We will be doing another webinar either the first or second week of May, so stay tuned for that. If anyone on this call has any comments or suggestions for future webinars, please let us know, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.